Bonjour. So here are your notes on negatives. I'm going to try to move through this in a way that's clear to you. The way your notes are set up, the first column are examples. Well, I'll explain the first column. The second column has a negative, and in bold I put the negative expression. And the third column has been left blank, so you can write notes down. So as I am telling you or explaining different details, you kind of add the rules or just make note of anything that you think is important. And that's what that third column is for. When we get to certain ones as well, I'm going to be showing you a few examples that are not on your notes, and so you might want to write those down in the blank. Okay, so the negation, the most simple negation is ne pas, and that's how we negate a sentence to simply say not. Je danse, I dance. Je ne danse pas, I do not dance. But of course there's other negative expressions, and they take on a different meaning. So the ne doesn't really have a meaning. The meaning is carried in the pas or rien or jamais or what have you. So pas means not. So what if we want to say never or nothing or no one? So let's look at a few negative expressions. For the first three, on the left column, these are synonyms. And so what is provided in the second column is a negative expression that means the exact same thing as the first. So let's look at the first example. Elle n'aime pas du tout le jus de pomme. This is just a little bit more expressive. This is just a little bit more emphatic, right? Elle n'aime pas le jus de pomme. Elle n'aime pas du tout, not at all. So another way of saying that is elle n'aime point le jus de pomme. So it means exactly the same thing as ne pas, it's just a little bit more oomph to it. Elle n'aime point le jus de pomme, pas du tout. Alors, par exemple, Madame Wively n'aime point faire de l'exercice. Okay, the next example we have is il a seulement 30 ans. Seulement means only. So what's another way of expressing that in French? Il n'a que 30 ans. This is one that's a little strange for us because it doesn't really seem like a negative in English, because it's not, but in French it is. Il n'a que 30 ans. Another thing that we saw from our story with Suzanne, elle a raconté seulement le début de l'histoire. Remember, seulement means only. So she told only the beginning. Elle n'a raconté que le début. The placement of ne que might seem a little odd to you. Notice that it's not just going around the conjugated verb. So a note that you might want to make is that the que goes in front of whatever it's modifying. What did she only tell? Only the beginning. Elle n'a raconté que le début. And we'll talk a little bit more in class about misplaced modifiers and how that works even in English, because you do have to be careful where you place the word only, because it does change the meaning. So notice that the que goes in front of whatever it's modifying. Okay, our next example, cet homme paresseux travaille rarement. Rarement means rarely or hardly or not at all. So even look at the next example. Je n'ai presque pas fini l'examen. I almost didn't finish, so I barely finished. So what's another way of saying that in French? We can use this negative expression, ne guère. Cet homme paresseux ne travaille guère. He hardly works. Je n'ai guère fini l'examen. I barely finished the test. So press pause and just read over the examples and make sure you understand them. For the next a couple of negative expressions, I'm going to look at the ones first that are more adverbial. And that's to say that they function like an adverb. They tell me how I do something. So let's look at, for these ones, if you look in the first column, I'm going to give you an affirmative, so kind of the opposite. And then you'll see the form négative. What's the negative form? And this is going with the most extreme negative usually. Okay? So in the first example, we're going to be looking at time. We're going to be looking at how often we do something. So we're going to look at a couple of adverbs. Il fait toujours de la musculation. Il nage souvent en été. Quelquefois, je fais du surf. Parfois, je joue au volley. Nous faisons de l'escalade de temps en temps. Notice that quelquefois, parfois, de temps en temps, those are all synonyms, and they all mean sometimes. Whereas souvent is often, and toujours is always. So what are ways to negate these? Well, we can simply use ne pas. Ils ne font pas toujours de voile. They don't always go sailing. Or I could say, ils ne font pas souvent de voile. It's not often. But of course, the most extreme opposite is never. Je ne cours jamais. So notice to express never, we put ne jamais around the verb. Here is an example in the passé composé. Nous n'avons jamais fait de la plongée sous-marine. And this is one that technically in a negative, that la should go away. Notice in the passé composé that the ne jamais goes around the helping verb. So that's something to make note of. The passé composé is where usually it gets the ne pas. Nous n'avons pas fait, nous n'avons jamais fait. Another example dealing with time in the affirmative column is déjà. Déjà means already. We typically use it in the passé composé. So, tu as déjà raconté l'histoire à Claire? Did you already tell her? Of course, we could say, no, I did not. But typically the idea is, did you already? No, not yet. And so how would we express that in French? Well, I could answer her question, using pronouns. Pronoun with a mistake. Je ne la leur ai pas encore raconté. So no, I have not told it to her yet. Well, that's a terrible example. Je ne la lui ai pas encore raconté. So pas encore simply means not yet. Elle n'a pas encore 18 ans. We can use it in the present tense. It's not as common. So she's not yet 18. Okay, we're going to skip the next row and go on to the third row where we see j'ai mangé une salade, mais j'ai encore faim. This is another adverb. Encore, in this particular case, means still. Or it can also mean, no, it means still. So j'ai mangé une salade, mais j'ai encore faim. I'm hungry. How am I hungry? I'm still hungry. Or est-il encore vivant? Is he still alive? And so typically the opposite of this is going to be ne plus. Elle n'a plus faim. It's not that she's not hungry. We're indicating that there was an end to it. She is no longer hungry. So implying that she once was. Elle n'a plus faim. Michael Jordan ne joue plus au basket. He used to, but it is no longer true. So there's been an end to it. Ne plus. Il ne joue plus au basket. And then non, il n'est plus vivant. No, he is no longer living. Notice these are typically going to be in the present tense. It's not to say that they can't be in the other tenses, but that's how we see it the most. Ne plus works just the same way as ne pas. It goes around the conjugated verb. There's nothing hard or special about this one. Okay, so now we're going to go back up to the example right above this. Elle a cherché partout. Elle ne peut pas trouver ses clés. Partout is an adverb that means everywhere. Elle a cherché partout. So what's the opposite of partout is nowhere. So elles ne sont nulle part. So she looked everywhere for her keys. They are nowhere. Nowhere to be found. Elles ne sont nulle part. So notice nulle part, it means nowhere, but you have to, like all these other negative expressions, you still have to put the ne in front. Ils n'ont voyagé nulle part. Notice the placement here. It does look a little strange. Typically speaking, the ne pas goes around the conjugated verb, and so in the passé composé, it would go around the helping verb. So this is where the negatives get a little tricky, because sometimes that rule applies, and other times it doesn't. So here is one, and the idea is that it needs to come after the verb that it's an object. So, ils n'ont voyagé nulle part. They traveled nowhere. Okay, so our last four examples are really where we have nouns after the verb, therefore they are objects. And we can replace these nouns with a negative expression, but same thing, they function as objects. And the reason why I grouped these four together is these four can also do something special, which I'll be showing that to you in the right-hand column. So let's look at the left-hand column. J'aime le coca et le café. I like both Coke and coffee. Notice though, if I want to say something that I do not like and I'm listing, you can't really use and. So and is the affirmative. I like this and this. However, in the negative in English, we say I don't like, I like neither this nor this. Okay, so this is the neither nor. Je n'aime ni l'eau ni le jus de pomme. So this is where we get ne, ni. So we still have to negate it with the ne. And then we just list ni l'eau, ni le jus de pomme. And you would list ni for as many things as you're listing. Okay. Let's notice that, and this is a nitpicky rule, but notice that we keep the article here. It's the definite article because we're liking, loving, preferring, hating. I would say j'aime l'eau, j'aime le jus, but je n'aime ni l'eau, ni le jus de pomme. However, I would like to point out here with mayonnaise and moutarde in the next example that there's no article. Il ne met ni mayonnaise ni moutarde sur son sandwich. And the reason for that is that if I were to make this sentence affirmative, I wouldn't be using la, I would actually be using de la. So il ne met, or if it were affirmative, il met de la mayonnaise et de la moutarde. So when we negate something, if it's not the definite article, you drop the article. So that's what you would just make note of over here. In the negative, you drop the indefinite and the partitive article. We can also use these with verbs afterward. Je ne préfère ni courir ni faire de l'aérobic. I prefer to not run and to not do aerobics. It works just the same way. You put the ni in front of the infinitive. So one thing that I want to add over here into the right-hand column is I said before that these are more so objects. What do I like? Water. What do I not like? Apple juice. And so we're listing objects. However, ne, ni can also reverse. It can flip-flop, and we can actually use it as the subject. So ni Paul ni Claire ne vont au cinéma. So neither Paul nor Claire are going to the movies. Notice that the ni comes first. You still put the ne in front of the verb. Ni Paul ni Claire ne vont au cinéma. Ni l'espagnol ni le grec ne m'intéresse. So neither Spanish nor Greek are interesting to me or interest me. Notice that what students often want to do is throw pas at the end because they're so used to having ne and something following it. But we don't need that because the negative is actually coming in front. So we flip-flopped it, and now the ni is functioning as the subject. Whereas in the middle column, the whatever you're using ni with is functioning as the object. Our next negative is ne personne. So the opposite is quelqu'un or tout le monde. Elle est encourageante à tout le monde. Tu dois amener quelqu'un à la boum. So, il n'est méchant à personne. He's not mean to anyone. Je n'y emmène personne. I'm not taking anyone there. Elle n'étudie avec personne. She's studying with no one. Ne personne is the most strange because if you notice, it doesn't always follow the verb. We put ne personne where it best belongs in the sentence. So the very last example, elle n'étudie avec personne, she's studying with no one. You need that preposition there. Or je ne parle à personne, I'm talking to no one. This would also be true in the passé composé. Je n'ai étudié avec personne. So it's a long time before you get to the end, and that's okay. This is also like ne, ni, in that it can often function as the subject. So I could say, personne n'est venu. No one came. Notice that no one is the subject, and I still use ne. Another one that we're familiar with is ne rien, the opposite of quelque chose, something, or the opposite of tout, all. Il a mal aux dents, alors il ne mange rien. He's eating nothing. Nous n'avons rien appris. We learned nothing. Now notice this one does go around the helping verb. So make note of that. Ne rien goes around the helping verb. So in English we would say I bought nothing, but in French we have to say nous n'avons rien appris. And look at this very last example. Je n'ai rien vu d'intéressant. I saw nothing interesting. We can still modify it with an adjective, and we have to use this D apostrophe. Okay, there is going to be a part 2 for notes because I am running out on time.